as a whole is revealing its centrist and neoliberal core. But by that, what I mean is they're still very much tied to big business, big money. They're still not putting poor people, working people at the center, and they've been holding back in regard to the details. And we see now, when it comes to the details, there's a low priority for poor and working people when it comes to the Democratic Party budget.
Ear to the political ground in this country, you'll hear the usual discourse about the border, immigration, foreign policy, Obamacare. But there's something else when you take some time and filter out the standard chatter. Democrats have for decades been lockstep sure they have the black vote in their hand, solid. And there is nothing Republicans can do about it because, if you listen to their side, African Americans have a vehement dislike for anything Republican and know only the Democrats have policies that will make their life better. There's some disruption in that thinking. Not yet an earthquake, but tremors nonetheless. Ones that have black Republicans fighting back and gaining more strength across the nation. Let's welcome into MidPoint author, Tea Party conservative, and host of the Black Sphere radio program, Kevin Jackson joins us today. Kevin, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Kevin, in your opinion, how dangerous is it if black Americans continue to listen to the message that they are being fed by the Democratic Party come the midterms and the 2016 presidential election?
Oh, well, you're, pardon me, you're seeing the outcome of it. Look at the policies. If you look at from a black liberal perspective, they've got it all. They've got a congressional black caucus that's been driving the agenda for decades. They finally got the, uber liberal black president. And during this time of what should be nirvana, I defy you to find me the black utopia. Is it in New Orleans? Is it in Atlanta? Where is it? All the policies that Barack Obama has implemented that supposedly are going to help America have absolutely crippled the black population. So much so, the joke is he might as well be the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. If
that is the case, though, why then do black Americans continue to support him, vote for him, and follow the Democratic Party?
Well, the short answer is ignorance and people that just vote on things that have nothing to do with the ability of the candidate. And what we saw in the election of Barack Obama was, and I know you've heard this many times, style over substance, but it really was that. What Republicans do is they try to run a campaign that says, take a look at all these critical issues and think, and react with your brain. And meanwhile, Barack Obama was a rock star, and we don't look at things from a perspective of selling our candidate in that way. Now, I understand why. I don't want a rock star as a president. I want somebody that's going to do the job. But unfortunately, we're at a point in history where we've got to start looking at candidates with a little bit more style.
Okay, now I'm going to go back to your word ignorance in there, which has been used before. For the first time in history, according to the Census Bureau, blacks are now voting at a higher rate than whites. Roughly 2 out of 3 eligible blacks voted in the 2012 election. So let's take your word ignorance then, and let's take that from fact and go from there. If indeed that is the case in many instances, how then does the Republican Party educate these black voters into what they believe is the reality and also have them face what's going on realistically, again, in the Democratic Party? How do you educate that?
Well, I think you really got to it's tough love. I wrote a piece just recently at my site that talks about if you really want to destroy a city, number one, put a liberal in charge of it, but number two, make it a black liberal and you're guaranteed destruction. Look at Detroit as an example. And you'll see that they've had a litany of black leaders. Being most recently, they had the guy in jail now is Kwame Kilpatrick, and prior to him, it was Coleman. So you've got a prime example, and it's in city after city. If you find a city that's going bankrupt or teetering on bankruptcy, you can practically be guaranteed, number one, it's a liberal or a black liberal. Show the examples and be fearless in talking about it. Look, Detroit is having its problems right now. 320,000 people aren't paying their water bill. Who do you want to blame? You're going to blame George Bush? You're going to blame a white Republican? Or are you going to blame the faces that are in your face every single day in the media and who are the real causes of it?
Is it fair to say that if the Republicans want to make inroads with black America, they need to, as some people have indicated, get away from going to the ministers at the ground level and certainly stay, as many people have said recently, away from the NAACP, which we have to point out at their recent convention, they had a group of black conservatives there who were given a single booth, and some will say that they were verbally accosted when they were there.
They were.
So if you're going to be a Republican at this point, would you agree then? Stay away from the grassroots ministers and the churches, stay away from the NAACP. If that's the case, where do you go?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. The Republicans should tell the NAACP, we don't care about you. You're an organization that we started and you don't even mention the Republicans on your website. So why would we pay any attention to you? You've marginalized black people for decades since you've taken over and had a liberal bent. So why would we pay attention to you? But I would put that same charge out to black liberals who say, where are the Republicans? I'd say, look, it's not our role to come to you. It's your role to see that you're in an abusive relationship and to get help. And guess what? We're here. If you want us, we're willing to help. But when we placate, Reince Priebus just recently spoke, I believe, at the Urban League, and his speech was written to black people. It talked about things like recidivism in prison and sentencing guidelines and things like this. Don't speak as if black people are criminals and that's something we're going to like. Hey, we've lessened the drug charges for crack cocaine, so that should make you black folks happy. That's pandering. That is the worst thing you can do. You speak to blacks the same way you speak to any other audience and say, look, there's opportunity over here. If you want insanity, stay on the left. I'm not going to chase you.
But you won't get that from a lot of African American leaders, certainly those on the Democratic side. They will say you don't speak to black people the same way because they have certain needs, certain desires, certain things that they need to have taken care of. So there are those who would disagree with you and say you have to speak to them specifically and at what they consider to be, what the Democrats consider to be, their level.
Well, I would tell you what, if you go to and hear Joe Biden talk about educating the people in the black sections of his town, when you look at Hillary Clinton, who did her no ways tired and tried to make herself sound like she was some sister from the hood, if the Republicans took those comments and actually said, look, we're not pandering to you. I'm not going to lace my terminology with a bass line and some nice jazz little tune and bring a bucket of chicken. If you want that, you got all that monkey business on the left. If you want me to talk to you like a human being and tell you what we have to bring to the party, I'm all business. And if you think it works, it only works because of that ignorance. But I'm going to tell you, it's changing. People in the black community are tired of the pandering. They're tired of not getting a result. If you look at the results of the Democrats over the past few decades, if Republicans only spoke of those things repetitively, and by the way, outside of the echo chamber and in the black neighborhoods, we change this thing in 2 election cycles.
All right, now let me let you hear Mitt Romney, the former Republican presidential candidate. He was on the Sean Hannity show yesterday, and Sean asked him about his short list of Republican nominee favorites. Here's what he had to say.
Well, there's quite a group of people among those that are considering running that I think have the potential to become a terrific president and to win. From Paul Ryan, who of course is my running mate, and Jeb Bush and Chris Christie and Scott Walker and Marco Rubio, and I mean it's a long list of people who I think are people who recognize the need to strengthen our foundation at home, the core here.
Kevin, there's a lot of people in there that he mentioned, but do any of those candidates really speak to the African-American voter?
Well, the short answer is I'm a huge Ted Cruz fan, so I'd certainly support him. And I also like a lot of the things that Rand Paul says, but who he left out of that discussion were people like Dr. Ben Carson, people like Alan West, who can resonate, even potentially Herman Cain if he decided to run again. And that's the problem, is the Mitt Romneys of the world, it's almost incestuous thinking. They get used to seeing the same political guys who've paid their dues. The reason why he didn't put Alan West and Dr. Ben Carson or Herman Cain in that mix is they haven't paid their Republican dues. Everybody else has gone through the Republican system, the Bush League all the way up to the major leagues. So, and that's the problem. We have too many people that are saying the same things, and none of those people that he mentioned are ever going to resonate in the black community. And even Ted Cruz would have a problem resonating in the minority community at large, including Latinos.
Well, let me ask, you just mentioned Ben Carson, you mentioned Carson, West, and Cain here, all three fine African-American and potential candidates here. Are you saying then that the African-American voters would only then, or would be more likely to go for a fellow African-American, and that it would be difficult for a white politician then to get them over to the Republican side?
Not at all. I believe that if a white politician were to speak truth to blacks on the left and say, look, unlike what you may hear from other people, I'm not pandering to you. I'm not giving you anything. I will make sure you have an opportunity America is for the opportunity, and I will make sure you have full opportunity. But if you think I'm going to pander to you, you've got the wrong person. If somebody says that, they'll get the attention. And once you get the attention, you'll find out blacks in America they're aware of what the Democrats are doing, and they want another solution, but they don't know how to go about it. It's up to us to say, we're here for you, just come get it.
I only have about a minute left. There are people who believe that what Barry Goldwater said 50 years ago, that the Civil Rights Act was unconstitutional, but he would obey it if enacted. People say that was the schism there, and that's where the African Americans started to fall away from the Republican Party. Is it fair to say that it goes back that far?
It is fair to say that, and it's been completely misconstrued because everybody made it sound like he was saying, you know, if you want to have a business that caters to whites or something that caters to whites, it is your business. But the fact of the matter is that is how business works. I don't see very many bikers going into Victoria's Secret shop, you know, and I don't see many Victoria's Secrets models going to biker bars. So there's a way that the capitalist market does what it does. And Barry Goldwater was just saying, you can't regulate that. America's heart has to change. And I don't have a problem with that at all. But yes, that was the beginning, because the Democrats sold themselves as the party of civil rights at that point, when they're far from it.
10 seconds. Is the left-leaning media lying to the African American?
Absolutely, and it's going to backfire on them at some point.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Kevin Jackson, a pleasure to have you on the show. Please, let's come back and do it again soon.
My pleasure.
All right. It is not indeed just a little tremor. There is a groundswell in America. Things are changing indeed. Next up, America loves its dirt, and the people in Georgia were more than willing to accommodate that passion this week. It's all about politics. It's all about dirty politics. We love it when it happens. And it happened again. Stay with us right here on MidPoint.